te ta ial tātou sa ninga le fia. Ie le wha moe ono le nei lava o fuanga mo le palisi. E le tau ana tāle iwa. Mātou palisi nā le luai tu lai tu mai whatang. Ia peo kākou sa moe alua ia. Remember, this is a family service because we go off that instead of a family service, it becomes a public service. So keep in mind, it's a family service. If you're not called, at least you are participating in the gathering of this evening. So it won't be long, and outside, I'm very sorry because of the COVID and because the unavailability of the halls around here, these areas, we have set up the tables outside. So outside there will be a refreshment afterwards before you go in case somebody will faint on their way home, not being fed, but you will be fed all right. And those who would like to present the Malofa, they can do so outside, not in a church as usual. Some would do that, but we'll do it outside for those groups who would like to present a gift if they want it. There will be announcement for the time you present your pale and the kiofungala'au and the rest for the evening. So, having said that, I'd like to get yourself ready by preparing yourself for our Lord's coming tonight in our family service to grace us, to bless us, especially our farewell to Iakopo. Fonomua. Thank you.
ia walo pa ia tawe le tua au le mana le malo si malava o le tua le tama le tua le alo le tua le angangasa o lo whawhae lo ai mai se le sa winga pa ia ale aina e moli ai le anganga whawhetai le mea lofa o le ola po le soifua o le tama ia Fonomua Iakopo pale ai e le kamaloa na le patu ia la taua awa au pa ia sau ngata sa moa iona tuanga wha lupe o pa ia au ainga mo lato tama mo lato ainga e usunga atu mua mapule i tu lauma la taua ainga le tai ma le pa au fonuti ta lolo ia le viinga o le atua le lango matua o pa ia o le apanga luenga le atua o le ainga o sa le vi o feoi o le tala lelei i so o se fata faitaulanga o tae au le atunu a manino i ngā ua mamalama foi nei tu longa le tae au i le paia mamalu le ainga whanonoa e whasino i a Safotu o paia o Samoa ua uma o na vai awa o paia le mawhaia e se tasi o na toe suia tauina ia o taia le vai a whei i o tau Sama whainga Samoa poto ma pia poi lape opu nei sala le nananga i so tu mai alo au tu atu lo lima ta patia le nei aso ale ai moli ai le whainga mea alofa le soifua po le ola le tamanei. We come together tonight as God's family to return to God the most precious gift of life, and I'm honored to stand before you on behalf of my brother here, but especially to you, Iakopo's family, to you, Genevieve and Bruce, and to your children, Madison and KD, to you, Jacob, John, Kale, and to the siblings, to Luisa, my sister, Maria, Ana, Noela, ya Maise, ya Lefiona, ya Malotoa, Yoane. Aina Fabofa. Fafitai, le tua, i tato, ai, luma tua, le tua, toi moni a malo le anga fafitai. I ona o le le anga o le and every one of you tonight as we come, in our family service to return to tell the story and to celebrate life and its tears and sadness that falls on us. For those of you not of the Catholic faith, I extend a warm welcome to you. O le nei sawina i le ananga whawhetai i le suapo le tomaa, le alo, le ananga paia. Ia patasi le li I mauto. Ia I tato ni lua le tua I tato mana tautala. E muna tato lo. Ia mua I le nei taulanga I le nei a fia fi tato. I fo atu ma tato tangi atu I le tua ia fisoso ani mai. Patasi mai lo na nganga e mawhai o na langa patasi ai. Ia le nei. Saminga whale ai ngai la tātou I whonga mla tātou whamanga lona. Le tātou te mai mātou te talo i le nei po ia e whātasi mai. Ai to ninga le upenga la mātou whai ngā tauranga e mua na mātou whātu lou ma mātou whāmaulanga. E so ani mai i la mātou sauninga i le nei po. Whāpaia mai e tari le nei me alofa o lau me alofa i tono si o mātou tika molia. Oe o lea tua na mari whāpāuru ma le kuluse. Oe toe solo e se ai ang salama vai vaina i mātou ai mise le nei tamai luma o lau o fio. I lau tangi luma le kuluse na toe se so oi le langi ma le lau langi lea mātou te tangi ai le tua e so ani mai. Pāpaia la mātou po i lo wanganga paia. O la mātou o lenga lea latu ia Yesu Keriso lo mātou wani. Amen. Ala watu le nuu paia o le kuia tātou la mai lalo i le nei taimi. Le alafo atu i le mafo i a mafo i taitaia i tāmina e ana le o le nei po o le po tātou te pese ai ia ma tātou toe whamanatu le pese na usua na usuinga e le manei i le awa ma le pāpana.
Lea o tātou o mai nei. Ai whangasoloa tātou mōli mau. Nā se mātou whanatua. E tōru lava minute tuina atu ia te oe. Ai, o le amumua lava ia alo Iakopo, inga. Ia o le amumua lava ia auma ia mōli mau lua. Ia sauri mai na foi pese a le kalesia. Waina tuku au pese i tupapa yetu iai. Ia fasolo tulala amutu e watu pese. Alfe ni tasi ala tu pese. Ia umafode atu e watu fasolonga. Ia alte mineu te mala watu ila usunga JK. Sumaile. Alulua mafutanga maltoina. Alo le nei o Fonomua.
Te whatalofa atu le taitano le tamina. Ia te mai a patele. A una usua kai whiau. A le pie le tuanga sa. O te whatalofa atu ko i le paia. O wo. A inga mai masangi wa whio mai mo le lotu. A le a inga o somato tumabili ina. Ngoa. O Lake John Valley. musi muli mau. Musi mātua te mapiri. I'd just like to give a very warm welcome to family, friends, colleagues, loved ones who are here this evening to pay tribute to my father. The past 7 days has been a roller coaster of sorts, to say the least. But to be surrounded by love, to be surrounded by God, and to have all of my family fly in from all around Samoa, New Zealand, Sydney, Melbourne. It's nothing short of inspirational, and the gratitude that I have, I can't put into words. So thank you for joining me tonight, and thank you for joining all of us tonight to celebrate my father. I will never forget this evening, and I'm so happy that we could come together as one to pay tribute to my dad. Look, in true football fashion, I thought when I was writing this, I'm not going to be a negative Nancy tonight. I'm going to make sure I share the love and the joyful times that I experienced with my father. But further to my own eulogy, I'm looking forward to everybody else that will be speaking to us. I'm really looking forward to hearing about your memories of my dad. Good times, sad times, so that I can take those memories forward as well to help you move forward when this is all said and done. Constructed greatest hits. So coming in at number 20, the year is 2008, and my dad takes me to my first rugby training session over at Ashgrove Jeeps, which is over on the north side of Brisbane. Look, that was a very proud moment for my father. You might ask, what took me so long to get into rugby? I didn't start until I was 13 years old. It was the 2007 World Cup where we saw me and my dad would get up at 5 in the morning, even 4 in the morning, and watch the Manu play, and they got smashed in most of the games except for when they beat USA. But those moments with my father made me very keen to try out rugby union. So I said to my dad at the end of 2007, you know what, Dad, I think I want to try out rugby. So come 2008, he joined me up to the local club. I almost tore both of my hamstrings that night doing burpees, but getting into the car, I remember how proud my father was of me, that he'd finally gotten me into the sport that he loves. So that's a special memory for me. Number 19 is all the times that my dad took me to my Uncle Filippo's house when I was growing up. So that was a constant when I was between the ages of 3 and even maybe 9. We went there every week. My dad would get along with all the cousins, with Mark, and he'd drive me home. I got home safely. So Mark, I know if you're watching on the live stream, I know you're gutted that you can't be here tonight, but my love goes out to you as well. I know Dad's passing has hit you pretty hard, and I love you. Number 18 was when my father took me to my first rugby game in 2008 against Wynnum. And it's funny, I remember these memories so clearly. It was only less than 15 years ago, but I remember looking out as he drove me and just watching the trees, and then looking at my dad and thinking, man, I'm about to play my first rugby game. But what was so special about that moment was scoring a try in front of my dad. Got fed the ball from the halfback on the 22 line, broke the line, palmed off the fullback, and scored right under the posts. And I remember looking at my dad, and there was no emotion. Just arms folded, shades on,
and not a single smile, but I knew I made him proud. And it wasn't until we got into the car that he said he was proud of me and that I played a good game for my first game. So that was a really special memory for me. Number 17 is, both my parents worked really hard to get me and my sister through school. Times, were frequently quite tough. And in 2009, my dad said to my mum that he wanted to get me into a school called Morris College Ashgrove. This is a quite prestigious school, where the likes of John Eales, and a few other famous Aussie sporting legends have come from. This was a really big deal for my father because he has a connection and great knowledge of the Maris brothers in Samoa, and he really wanted to put me into a rugby school. That's something that he really wanted to do. I could tell he was very passionate about it. And so, this is the type of school where, you've got to be on the waiting list from birth, really, to get in. And I don't know what type of strings that he pulled in the background, but he was able to get me an interview there. And from there, I was able to get in. And so I know that made my father very proud. And it wasn't a cheap school to be sent to as well. I recall many tense moments between my father and my mother around my school fees, but I'm just so grateful that my dad persisted and that I ended up graduating from that high school, because it's a very proud school to come from. Number 16, the year is again 2008, and I sit down and I watch my first Blues game with my father. I watched plenty of games with Dad growing up, Black games and the like, but this was the first game that I actually sat down and was present from start to finish. Everybody sitting here today knows that my dad was a very passionate Blues supporter. I don't find anyone that's more passionate about the Auckland Blues than my father. But on that night, it was a beautiful night. It wasn't raining outside, it was cold, but Dad always liked to leave the front door open, and he's sitting on the couch, both feet on the rest, and he's got his wine in his right-hand side. And then I'm sitting beside him on the lazy boy, and I think I watched my father more than I watched the Blues during that game, because he was just so passionate. And, there were many, key catchphrases that sort of stuck with me over the years. Every time there would be a knock on, he'd say, "What? What?" Or every time they would try, he'd go, "Yeah, yeah." And that sort of lives in my head rent-free, those voices of my dad doing that. And so on that night, the Crusaders won. The Crusaders usually get the upper hand over the Blues. And, my dad was very, very upset, but I think it was on that night that I realised that, my dad is a serious Blues supporter. So, fantastic memory of mine. Number 15 is going back to Easter in 2021. There was a very sobering moment where, we were all sort of just sitting in Uncle Tom's garage, and I was sitting at one end of the table and my father was sitting at the end that night. So I sort of took in the whole moment. That was a very special moment for me, because that's when my cousins from Sydney had come up and moved from Sydney to Brisbane, and that's the first time that I caught up with them. But that moment sort of stuck with me, and I remember thinking to myself in the car, gee whiz, how special is it to have these guys over here, and how loved is my father? I haven't, I guess at our family reunion in 2005 was the last time that I saw all of these guys together. But to see that, I sort of realized, oh my gosh, like, my father is so loved, even by, the younger generation, and he could relate to everybody. So that was an amazing moment. Number 14 was all the times that me and my dad went for Gorlingi for sprint training. So my dad always used to brag to me when we were in our younger years, or when I was in my younger years, that he was a sprinter in high school. So, some of the old boys here might be able to validate that. But, I never really sort of took it seriously. I was like, sprinter in Samoa, what? Like, did you go to the Olympics? If you didn't, then it doesn't matter. And my dad decided to prove a point to me one day, and he said, look, son, you're not doing very well on the rugby field. You're fit. You're just going around in circles. Let's go for a run. So he took me up to the back hills in Fernie Hills, which is, about a 10-minute walk from our house when we were living on the north side at the time, and he taught me how to sprint. everything from getting down in the sprinting position. Like, he was serious, he was standing there with his arms folded, and he had the gun, and he was ready to just fire it off. But it was that day, I had a race with my father, and I found out for somebody in their late 40s, he still had it. Believe me, he still had it. His form, I'll never forget it. He had, he kept his back straight, his chin high, and his arms were almost robotic, almost like the way he walks, because everybody knows he always used to walk with a purpose before his stroke. But he beat me on that day. So then I went back to the drawing board, and I started watching Digby on there, and then I was like, when are we going for a sprint again? Because Digby on was one of my favourite players. So my dad, he was a very fast man, even in his later years as well. Number 13, quite similar. I'll just smooth over this one, but me and my dad actually played quite a bit of tennis, particularly between the years of 2006 and 2007. More of a father bonding sort of thing, but he always used to take me down to the local tennis courts, and we used to have a hit, and we used to pretend that we were Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer, and just go back and forth. And believe me, this old man, he beat me 80% of the time, just because he was so unco. Didn't know what to do with it. So those were very special moments, and then he'd go home and have his fun. What does this guy do? It was so amazing that we. This is a bit of a funny one, but my dad always used to like taking us to the Broncos Leagues Club, and I think there's a fair amount of people here today that probably got roped into that. Because my dad was such a passionate Broncos supporter, the Warriors, he puts the Warriors first, but the Broncos, you could almost say it's quite equal. He loved the Broncos, this was what symbolised his move to Brisbane. This is, he'd been following Broncos since 2003 when we got here. So every time relatives used to come, we used to get in the car and go to the Broncos Leagues Club, and the food was really bad. But he'd show all the photos of all the greats and be like, oh yeah, look at the Broncos, Wayne Bennett, and I remember him taking a photo of the people as well, and they were odd moments because half the time we'd rock up and he'd really get to the front because he'd already down a bottle of wine before we even got there. And then we'd sit down, and then he'd sober up, and we'd have a feed, and then we'd go. But we took so many family members there, and it was almost like a ritual for my family to go there on birthdays and special occasions. So I understood that, but look, I put it down to his love for the Broncos. Number 11, I'll get off the rugby topic shortly, but I guess all our conversations about rugby, everybody knows that my dad is a sports fanatic. If you only have to take one look at his Facebook page to see how much he posts about the Blues, about sports in general. So conversations with my father about rugby were very helpful for me over the years. He taught me the value of players like Brian Lima, and Michael Jones, and all of those guys. So super inspiring stories that my dad would tell me. Number 10 is our family reunion back in 2005. Some people probably laugh, but seeing him lead our item was pretty cool. When I go back and I watched, I don't have the copy now, but I remember watching it back after the family reunion and seeing him lead our item, and I thought, oh man, I've got a pretty cool dad, eh? He's leading all the way to Calvary, and we did something cool that night. We did something really cool. I think it was you had to be there to see it moment, but it was basically it was just a seabird to all the way to Calvary, and then it was after Uncle John did his solo Australian Idol performance, eh? So that was nice. Number 9 is when my dad first took me to the Chanel Old Boys Association. To all the the Gorngais after, where I'd be chilling with the Pereira boys and Carl and Patrick and all of those guys. I haven't forgotten those guys. But those were cool moments. And my dad would always ask me, son, all right, let's go to Wynnum. We've got the Chanel Old Boys local on today. It wasn't Faye or anyone else. He always wanted to take me. So with regret, it's a shame that I couldn't attend those with my father in his later years. Number 8 was in 2015 when my father, as everybody knows, had a stroke. That was a very humbling moment for me. Those closest to me will know that I wasn't actually on good terms with my father during that year. And so I'm so grateful for my sister and Bruce during those 6 months. I wasn't talking with my father to have carried that, that support of him during that time. But when I found out so the day of his stroke, they actually texted me and she let me know the news. And God works in mysterious ways. I sort of just had a complete change of heart. I dropped everything. I dropped all my hard feelings. And she asked me, we're going to see Dad at the hospital this afternoon over in Logan. So I said, yeah, absolutely, come pick me up. So they came and picked me up at Richlands, and we went down to Logan and we saw Dad. But the reason why I bring up this memory is because that was the start of something new for my father. Those later years are the years that I really cherished with my father, because that was the start of where the relationship between my father and I really prospered. Number 7 was Christmas 2019, where I cooked for my family for the first time. People didn't really rate me, Like when I said to my dad, "Oh yeah, I'm pretty good at cooking," And he said, "When? You never cooked when we grew, when you grew up. Like, when did you start learning how to cook?" So I said, "Oh, all right. Well, this Christmas I'll do the feed for you guys." So, I whipped up a couple of dishes, and we had an apartment over at Kangaroo Point, and I took over my mea, and Dad had a try of it, and his reactions will stay with me forever, because he was just pleasantly surprised. He's like, "Oh yeah, finally somebody in this family can cook besides me." So, and then ever since then, he'd asked me to come over to Auntie Louisa's house where he was staying at the time and cook for him. So, that was special. Number 6 was Christmas 2018, where we took my all-time favorite family photos. You guys will probably have seen this on Facebook, but Dad would always select the theme, and he'd give us plenty of notice. And the theme for that particular year was just white tees. So I was like, "Oh yeah, easy. Yep, Kmart, let's go." So Christmas 2018 was at the Gold Coast, where we took those photos just outside our hotel that we were staying together as a family. Boy, did they turn out amazing. There's going to be a couple on the slideshow that you guys will see at the end tonight, but those are photos that I will cherish forever. Just seeing, the glow on my dad's face and in everyone's faces. The weather's beautiful, the sun's out in those photos, but, I never really thought taking family photos would be such a special thing, but now I sort of reminisce and I think, boy, that was a special moment. Number 5, Christmas 2020. We're at the Gold Coast again. We've made a habit out of it by this time. It's again just the final years with my father. There was a funny moment, where Bruce and Faye and the girls, they went off to Melbourne for the weekend, and it was just me and my dad. When they walked out of the door, I was lying on the couch, and my dad was on his laptop drinking his wine. And then when they came back on Sunday, I was again lying on the couch, and my dad was still sitting on his laptop with his wine. And my sister, Bruce, she goes, "Man, what did you guys get up to this whole time?" And, I said, "Well, we were just hanging out, we were just spending time together." And that's how, that was what the relationship between me and my father was. We could just coexist in a room, do nothing together. And that was basically what we did. Which was, it was, I know it sounds strange, but, we were just happy being around each other, which was special. Number 4 was all the times that my father called me during work hours, after work hours. He used to call me every other day, probably every second day. He probably calls everybody in this room every second day, now that I think about it. But, my father would call me. It didn't really matter what time of the day, because I know he always used to work from home as well. But I was scrolling through Facebook the other day because he used to call me on Messenger, and it's such a shame that there were so many missed calls where I didn't press that answer button, which I wish I did press that green button. But you know, those were important times, because I knew my father needed to hear my voice, and to be honest, I needed to hear his voice as well. So those chats, they did go a long way towards, you know, giving us the sort of energy to go for another couple of days till we needed to speak to each other again. Number 3 is a really special one for me. The date is May 12th, 2012. Me and my father are travelling along Newmarket Road to the hospital, to the Royal Brisbane. And that was the day that Madison Rose was born, and the day that, you know, my dad became a granddad. But I remember vividly driving along Newmarket Road with him. And, you know, again, the weather was dry. It was a beautiful night, you know. It was a very somber but very equally exciting car ride, you know. I remember it was quite a silent car ride. Usually Dad has the radio on and we're just chatting about rugby or something, but we weren't really saying much to each other. So I thought, oh, you know what, I'll break that. So I turned to my father and I said, "Hey, Dad." And he goes, "What?" And I turned to him and I said, "How does it feel that you're now a grandfather?" And my dad sort of sat there, and there was no words, there was no response. He just smiled. And he had a very unique glow in his eyes when he was smiling. So I said, "Oh yeah, Dad, well, you just keep focusing on the road and smiling, and we'll be at the hospital in 5 minutes. It's okay, you don't have to talk." Number 2, 2015 to 22. So like I said, those were the golden years where I'd like to say that the relationship between my father and myself was at its strongest. Since he had his stroke, you know, we both sort of just let the walls down bit by bit around each other. And we grew to be very honest and very caring and very transparent with each other, which is so special, because I'm happy that we got to build that strong relationship prior to his passing. I'm so happy that we got to drop everything that happened in the prior years, and we really got to just love one another unconditionally. And rounding off at number 1 is just, again, all the little things and all the final moments that I spent with my dad together. So I'd go over to Forest Lake every sort of 1 to 2 weeks, and I'd always make sure that I watched the Blues game with him. So he didn't even have to ask. I'd just always be over there. You know, otherwise he'd just be watching the Blues game on his laptop. So I'd always just go over there, and we'd move over to the TV, and we'd turn on the Blues, and we'd watch the game together, and we'd just, you know, talk rubbish, and then I'd leave. And those moments are the moments that I will never forget, because those were the ones, you know, in my final moments with him. You know, I remember rocking up to the front door and just yelling, "Dad!" And he'd go, "Yep." And then he'd come out, and he'd always have this smile on his face, as if it's the first time that he'd seen me in years. And and that smile is something that I wish I could have back, but I'll never forget it. My final memory was with Dad the Sunday before he passed. I went around to his house and picked him up, and we went over to the tavern. He was craving a steak, so we went over. We just had a chill day together at the Durack Tavern. He had a steak with Diane sauce and a beer, which is what he usually has. And, you know, we just had a good yarn. And then I dropped him home. So I'll end it there. Those are some of my memories of my father. But Dad, I know you're watching with your up in heaven, so hopefully you haven't fallen asleep listening to all my stories. But there's plenty more to come. I love you.
I think we need a hymn after that. Can we have a hymn, please? The one that I've said it before, the group.
JJ said he's the favorite child. Nah, I'm the real favorite. Me and Paul, we always used to make a game plan and plan things. In June, we planned that we were going to go to Missy's daughter's wedding in Camera. So he invited me, not JJ. And at the same time, you know, 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago, the Sydney family came up, and Nick Morrow, he asked, what, I'm just, so Paul went inside, and he went and changed, he took off his Broncos jersey, and put on his Blues jersey, so he gave his Broncos jersey to Nick. And the next day, Sunday, he said to me, so, what the hell, I'm in the Nick. So I said to him, that's okay. But because when you work on yours, I'll come out with it. That's why not tonight. I mean, I come back on Nah, with this jersey, it's really important to me because Monday, 16, the day before he collapsed, I do afternoon shift, and by that time, Mo's already sleeping because he's had two bottles of wine. So I came home at midnight and I turned on the kitchen light, and we have a couch in our back living area, and I saw the jersey and I was really happy. My heart was, there goes my Broncos jersey. I checked the size, it was XXL, but I didn't want to open it just in case it was his one. So in the morning, when I woke up, I went to his room to see he was in there. He was gone to work. And I looked inside his room, I saw his jersey. So I thought, when I see him tonight, I'll say thank you. But I never got to say thank you because, that was the last time I got to get anything from him. So that's why I said to the family, tonight, I'll come offer there to his family service. So make sure I use it. And, everyone looks good. He always loves rugby league, rugby union. And, I used to talk to him, and he used to talk to me like Gus School. He knows all the stats, all the try scorers, all the winners. I was like, Bo, what on me? Yes. Now all his friends and all his family come over. Ka o meira ko story ya. Ora o kamere leisonga ra kapi. Yeah. Kokongo whango ia bossy. Back to you, boss. But our household was a very loving house and very humbling. The first thing he did when we moved into our new house we purchased was he got Father Bonnie, our local parish priest, to come bless our house. And with that blessing, ever since, our house has always been a happy home. Not just for us, for Genevieve's family, but also for my family. He got along with my parents as well. And also, I remember he said to me, education was a big thing to his dad. His dad was a shopkeeper, and when they were growing up, that's what he wanted each of his children, be educated. So he told me how he got his bachelor. He went to university and he achieved that. And then he told me how hard he worked to pay for his children's university because they're not Australian citizens. And I really respect his hard work. Even to his dying day, he went to hard work. And I tell my children, you have to go uni now because you got, grandpa, you got your mom and Uncle JJ, and I used to. And they turn to me and go, Dad, what about you? I went to university in a nightclub. Nah. But at the end of the day, we always have fun, and it's always loving. Alright, manguia lo malanga, and grow some wings.
Ia pēr mātou whai atu te mi o whanu, ia mala asoa I nei ma tu mai tai leo. Tasi o tu whino Fonomua ana uiti me, O ia leo le awhaila ni moni pau, ia mai a lea, ia o na mai leo stato pese, ia umal moni mau lea, are the old boys, the Chanel old boys ready? You'll be a seat.
E ola ere mea. Ia, e mumona o whaturau le Eucharistia pa ia o na whangalilo. Le ngatai lea, ia, le fionga ia Pater Morris. Ia, ai mas fo le pa ia ma le manu au fia le neko. Ona o le family service for Fonomua. Ia o au ere uniso. Amu ia e I've got three things I'm going to talk about tonight. First, beginning. Second, middle. The third one, the ending. Why are you laughing? Yeah. Iakopo came to New Zealand for 3 months for holiday. And that's about beginning of 1984. And when he arrived in Auckland, that's the time our mom was sick. And then after 3 months, he go back. But before he goes back, he asked me and my husband Tom, oh sorry, I didn't, my husband Tom, he me, if he can get a working permit, he wants to come back to New Zealand because Mom's sick. Iakopo was supposed to go to America, but he changed his plan because our mother was sick. So anyway, I asked my husband, my dear Thomas, to get a permit for a working permit because without a working permit, you can't come to New Zealand. So anyway, Tom do all that for him. So about 2 months he went back, he came back that's in the middle of 1984. So when Iakopo arrived in New Zealand, that is, he come permanent. This man, he is a spoiled brat in our both families, my mom's side, my dad's side. In the go to Pango, I think his plan, he wants to be an actor. I think that's why he went to American Samoa. There's a school there for that. But anyway, he changed all that plan because our mother was sick. So anyway, he came. Yeah, I don't know where he says you opo we kusa leihu maleihu a Fonomua. Yeah, in those days, Mom was really sick. The doctor told us and tell us how much months she's gonna live. But Iakopo's drinking was getting worse and worse and worse. I went because Mom was staying with my sister Celia at their house. Celia's house is number 53. Our house is number 50. We live in the same street. So I went and see my mother and I talked to him because my kids said, Mom, you know Iakopo? He took your car last night. I said, I never seen Iakopo drive a car ever since he come to New Zealand. And the kids said, no, yeah. He was drinking and come home. He was looking for your car key and off he goes. So I went to see my mother and I asked her, Mom, can you talk to Iakopo because his drinking is very bad and it worries us because Iakopo took my car. I never seen Iakopo drive a car, but I don't know how he drive that car. So I can you talk to him because he never listened to us. Mom said to me, if you don't want him, all of you, if you don't want him, tell him go and leave him on the street. I said, oh my God, you know, Mom, that is why your son is very ill, because you spoil him so much. So, Mom passed, and then because he stayed with us, and then he get married, he moved out, and stayed in Territory. In 1997, we moved to Australia. And then he said he wants to move here to Brisbane. I said, oh, okay. So anyway, he came here with his family, stayed with Joanne and Sadie. And then he moved to my older sister Lisa in Cleveland. In end of 1920, December the 8th, we moved from Sydney to Brisbane. And he was staying with Auntie Louisa. But in those days, before he had a stroke, I kept pushing him, Kopo, you better save up and buy a house for you and your family. And he said to me, how can I buy a house? I'm paying my kids' school. It seems like I'm paying a mortgage because both of them they're at the uni. I said, oh, okay. And he said to me, maybe sometimes after the kids' education. I said, oh, all right. Then I stopped pushing him. And then we come here in the end of 2020, sorry. When we came here, we start looking for, we all staying at Louisa's house at Cleveland. He stayed upstairs. And when we came, and Louisa said, well, I think all of you stay up there. But sometimes Iakopo is very, he's so stubborn, very stubborn. But he's got a very kind, loving person. And he's got a big heart. Very big heart, this man. Sometimes for whapela kala. Awa whapela poko malea nga ke fia poko mai. Because he always clashed with Lisa. Because Lisa was too worried about him drinking and all that. So when we first come here, we start looking for a house for ourselves. And then I said to him, Popo, why don't you ring Faye and start looking? And he said, looking for what? Looking for a house for you and your kids. So anyway, he ended up doing that. we got a house at the beginning of January 2021. We got our house the other 3 weeks. After 3 weeks, Faye rang his dad. Dad, we've got our house. I am so glad. Well, that's why I'm saying the beginning, middle, and the end. Because I was talking about when he first arrived in New Zealand, and in the middle, the mako mafutanga, at the end. I'm so glad because he said to me and my husband, thank you very much, Anna and Tom, for moving here to Brisbane. Well, waking up, well, so then we moved the other week, 2 weeks after that, they moved to their own house at Forest Lake. But the last time I talked to him, because from February, I was back and forward, Brisbane, Sydney, 3 times this year. And I was in Sydney, the last time it was Sunday. He passed on Tuesday night. And he rang me, Anna, when are you coming back? I said, maybe this week. And then we planned to come on Saturday, last Saturday. And my daughter rang me, Mom, Popo is really sick in the hospital. We were all in the hospital. I don't know, I was shocked. Because I were upset, he rang me. But I like language Iakopo le la fai mai. Kai oles ka kamalis ka. Ale language Iakopo le all F and this, F and that. All said, hey, Kopo, watch your mouth. Yeah, but anyway, I know how ole share my yakia long. Then I said to him, look, Popo, don't worry about those things. Just calm down. You're a sick man. So don't stress yourself. So I'm so glad, Popo, you're gone, but your kids are all, they've got good jobs, they've got a house now. Thank you, brother.
Salola tu inatu tatu whaipese.